The City Forgotten by Martin Hoyle, Part 2. Towering over me, the rope of his canvas sack tightly wound at his throat, a man stood cutting into his own breast with the blade of an axe. Sap like gore oozed leaden from the severed veins. Sightlessly seeing me through the mask, my enemy brought the axe from his own flesh and raised it above his head. With little time to react before he brought it down upon me, I moved swift as I could out of harm's way. Not fast enough. As I made to roll onto my right side, the blade of the axe buried its way into my left shoulder. Crying out in pain, I found myself again lying prostrate, now with the blade sticking into flesh and bone. I felt my own blood, hot and steaming as it issued from the wound in the icy air. While it did not sever my arm from my body, the axe was buried deep, and my assailant struggled to remove it. Placing a foot upon my chest, he fought to tear the axe from the meat and bone, at length prying it free and raising it for a second assault. Despite the agony and terror afforded by the situation, I resisted. Grabbing him by the ankle, I pushed upwards with all my might, taking him from his feet so that he stumbled back several paces. This I used as an opportunity to rise, grasping my injured shoulder, feeling the blood gush and run between my fingers and over the back of my right hand, as I, no longer caring if I found any further obstacle, ran from the street toward what appeared to be a diner. Judging by the colourless awning and the windows lined in neon sputtering, lifeless and grey. Heedless of the fact that I was trapping myself and had no real plan of action, I wrenched open the door of the diner and hurried inside. The mist followed. Within, all was silent. The mad whispering of outside was cut off from reality, and I stood with only the sounds of my pulse, my bleeding and my rapid breath, with the blood in my ears and the distinct perception of the lack of sound in the surrounding. The diner was clean and, under different circumstances, would have been an ideal place to sit and eat in the throes of relaxation, without a single care in the world. But these were not the circumstances, and I now realized the peril on which my life now hung, for I clearly had brought myself into my own trap. In fear, I looked all around the diner, and felt a moment's respite that I was alone. But when I peered out the window and saw the man with the axe making his way to the sidewalk, and the silhouettes of several of his brethren in the mist behind him, my anxiety, to the amplification of the pain in my wounded shoulder, returned in full force. Hope, however, did not seem lost. I saw across the counter and through the kitchen a door under a grey sign marked Exit. Instead of circling the counter, I leapt over its polished surface and through the kitchen door. Hurrying across the floor, I grasped the knob of the exit just in time to hear the twinkling of the bell in the entryway as the man with the axe entered the diner. But I could not turn the knob. My right hand, so terribly coated in blood, slipped from the brass and could not get a decent grip. In a moment of desperation, I lifted my hand up underneath my shirt. With this coating, like a glove, between skin and metal, I was able to open the way and run outside. I do not doubt my sanity, but what happened next has made me fear for it for many years. I know that, though at the time I attempted to tell myself it was a nightmare, it was not the fabrication of a sleeping mind. These events are true. When I escaped the city, I yet bled from my shoulder, and today I wield a scar. But when I stepped out from the diner and found myself not in an alleyway or on a lawn of dead frostbit grass, but in the selfsame street, facing the man who wielded the axe as though I never had set foot within any building, I felt a discernible cracking in my brain, as, with this impossibility, my sanity fought for its own crumbling foundations. For a fraction of time, my sanity indeed fled. For I despaired and thought of surrendering. I remained still, waiting to allow the masked man to strike at will. But when he raised the axe and brought it down, my instinct to survive was rejuvenated, and I reached with my blood-drenched hand and wrenched the axe from his hands. He showed no resistance. It was as though he had offered the thing to me. Thinking not of his sudden lack of will to unmake me, I took the axe and, swinging with all my might, brought the blade into his diaphragm. For a few seconds he stood, stricken dumb like one who has encountered an issue for which he had no solution. Bowing his head, he looked to the blade within him before falling, first to his knees, and then backward onto the ground so that his bent legs lay beneath his back, and the black fluids flowed out of him to form a pool below. Though this was now my chance to make a run for it. Past, though I dreaded the idea, the mighty towers still some distance away. Curiosity took hold, and I lowered myself onto my haunches beside the dead man. The knot of the rope was tight, but did not resist being untied. Without reluctance, wanting to see the face of my foe, I tore the canvas sack from his head. Rising quick as lightning, I nearly stumbled and fell at what I saw. A merciful God most assuredly would not allow such a sight to exist in the mortal realm. It was the unclean, tortured mask of the very personification of melancholy. It was a countenance of suffering, eyes yet aflame with something like life leaking black tears down the gnarled, knotted, and unholy features of mutilated eons. Many lives were in that face, all torn asunder by anguish of a flame expired, a plethora of existences twisted in ruin, and the terrors of the soul in sacrifice. Rotted and weeping, ceaselessly weeping, the cadaverous form, gnawed by time, had welcomed the death that could not be offered to himself by his own hand. I stood so long staring at the dead man that I did not notice the others. When at last I looked away, I was surrounded by a ring of dark figures, a circle growing tighter as they drew terribly close. But they did not attack. Looking from their brother, lying dead in a pool of the blood that was not blood, they regarded me through the canvas they wore and offered to me their weapons, each waiting in his or her turn to be slain. I could not offer them the reprieve they so desperately desired. I say I did not lose my sanity that day, and this is why. I refused to aid them, though they attempted to stop me, clinging to me and pleadingly offering their blades as I broke through the ring and their masses, making my way back the way I came, avoiding those terrible towers and what may have dwelt beyond the shattered, ash-ridden glass, until I came at length to the road I had left behind. When I returned to the road I had so long travelled upon, I did not look back to face the city again. I believe that it had faded away as the sun at last rose over the mountains, so that my shadow lengthened before me, and I made my way back to my home, leaving all hope of my long journey away behind. I die here now, writing these words. I know well the road where I encountered the city, though never once did I return to it. I have studied that place. Hell's Length, they call it. For many a weary traveller has gone there never to return. I do not know why the things that dwelt within the city at first attempted to slay me, and then, when I took one of their number, viewed me as a potential saviour. I do not know if the city still stands, or what has happened to any traveller unfortunate enough to vanish from that place. Above all, I do not know what was within the towers which I see even now in my mind's eye. Whatever terror lurked in those high chambers haunts me as an unseen evil, always on the edge of a dream as I waken. What demonic glimpse this is I dare not to ponder, but as I now sit at the end of my life, I have the distinct impression that I smell the lovely perfume of an old book. But with this, a scent most foul comes to me, an aroma which, so great in its repugnance, so substantial in its weight, seems to possess some presence of life and sound. Hello everyone, the Archivist here. Hope you enjoyed that story and that you weren't too creeped out by it. Or do I want you to be creeped out? I want you to be creeped out by it, really, don't I? Anyway, I won't keep you too long. Just wanted to say that if you enjoyed it, please do follow the channel so that you never miss out on one of our spooky stories. And if you have any suggestions for stories you'd like me to read or any of your own, please send them to me via Twitter at archivist_the. Sleep well.